right, so I kind of want to start it off with some context early on into this presentation. This isn't like a why you should listen to me specifically, but just kind of like what the purpose of this webinar is. Um, if you're in the process of looking at beta testing tools or thinking that you need to invest in beta testing tools, could be a helpful kind of a process or a flow or things that you should be considering when you're looking at testing tools. So we kind of put that together with that in mind. So if you want to keep that in mind as you're starting this webinar off, if you're looking to invest or looking to kind of evaluate tools, this might be helpful for you. All right, so really quickly, just an agenda. I have it broken into 5 parts. Obviously, the name of the webinar is 5 things that you should be should look out for in beta testing tools. That first one being taking inventory of your current program. It's always good to start off with like a retrospective of what you're doing today, what challenges you have, what issues you have, what's initiating the need to look at another tool or the interest in looking at another tool to run your beta test. Looking at the options, which is really kind of just like what's available to you in terms of beta testing tools, what kind of tools are there, aligning your problems that you have with testing, which is part of that like taking inventory thing, in trying to find features in a tool that can help you solve those problems. Definitely, it's very critical to make sure that if you are looking to invest in a tool, that it's going to solve those problems for you, because that's what's ultimately going to make you and your company happy. The 2 last things, thinking about how it's going to integrate into your business systems. And this is always a fun one for everybody, but looking to start off that kind of budget. What things should you be considering? Because let me tell you, I've been on a lot of sales calls with people, and it could be surprising looking at the cost of tools, but it's always important to have a context of what you're comparing that price to. So I have a couple of helpful tips about where to get started with thinking about your budget for a tool to help you run your beta tests. And at the end, we have room for some Q&A. So if you have things that you're thinking about or considering, or maybe I missed something and you want to talk about it, feel free to throw those over to Ria. She's very helpful in getting those into the webinar. If not, happy to respond to those things in email if you do want to reach out to me personally. All right, let's get started. So first, taking inventory of your program, your beta test today, how it's being run at your company. Before we kind of get into this specifically, I want to say there's a couple of reasons why people will kind of jump into looking at beta testing tools, and they're kind of interesting. A lot of times people are looking at create efficiencies, which is duh. Why would you invest in a tool? It's typically to make things a little bit easier on the lives of people that are managing it. But one other thing that's interesting is a lot of times people will look or take the leap into investing in a tool when they run into something like some kind of catastrophe, something went wrong with the product, and they're looking to invest in making sure that doesn't happen again. And a lot of times they look at beta testing because it's, oh man, we could have prevented that issue if we listen to customers, or why did we miss that inside our previous beta test? So that's some good food for thought in terms of, as you're taking inventory, what is the situation that's leading you to want to look for a tool? So let's look at this. And I like this is something we use in sales terms a lot, but this idea of a give-get. When you are doing a beta test, you're giving effort, you're giving something into the process, giving something into your testers or into product development. But what are you getting out of it? So all I like to do is just you could build I have a little table on the next slide that helps with this. But we see 2 examples here of if I'm going to take the time to request feedback from testers, and that could be like an email or some kind of announcement where I'm saying, hey, testers, I want you to test out this new feature that I have, and I'd love to get your feedback on it. That takes X amount of effort. You got to build that email. You have to send that off to everybody. Depending on how well you do, you could build a web page for those things. If you do have Centercode, you could create activities. You could send those off. But it's really thinking about this in terms of how much effort or time you're putting into it and what you're getting out of it. This is going to be very good as you're as you're looking to invest in tools, because it's going to give you shape of where the tools need to be, very good, what features the tools is going to need to have in order to alleviate that effort or to get more return out of it. So I have here just like a little cheat sheet, right? So you can have on your left just a list of things that you need to do throughout your beta, whether or not it could be things internal, like requesting scope for a project. Say you're a product manager and you want to go talk to your UX teams or your QA engineering team. Say, hey, we're going to run a beta test. Are there specific things that you want to look at? Are there things that you want to get out of this? So we want to look at that in terms of the effort it takes. And then we want to understand the tools that we're using today. So if you're using, say, Google spreadsheets, or you're using Excel to build your plan for this, or you have PowerPoint or anything like that. So it's good to take inventory of what it takes, what tools you're getting, and what the result was out of it. I can tell you a lot of times doing scopings inside meetings, you have a Google Doc open and you'll sit there, you just be taking notes. You have to translate that into some kind of plan. So, but the result could take a little bit of time to get. So this could be helpful for a lot of people. I know we have a new piece of content coming out that's going to be in regards to all these, elaborating a little bit more on these 5 steps. But what we're going to do is just grab those list of activities. When I say take inventory, those things that you had to do in your project. Here's just some examples of them, and really take a seat and look and see where the effort is going and what you're getting out of it today. That's going to be very helpful in shaping what you need from a tool to help you with beta testing. Now, if you are struggling to start off with that list, you can ask around. So say you're a higher level stakeholder, and you want to get a sense of how well the beta tests have gone before. Feel free to go talk with your colleagues, go get interactions. What's interesting is I know beta testing in a lot of companies is actually done in different ways based on the product manager or the teams running it. So getting a stake of who runs it what way can also be very helpful. Another way to look at this is kind of like the reverse end of it. You can go through results, and the results could be on SharePoint, or they could be emailed out, or you could have a Confluence page that has all these results on it. And you can start off by looking at, okay, what did I get out of the beta test? I may not know exactly what effort it took, but what did I get out of it? And am I satisfied with that? Could we got more? How did that affect the product? Really understand of what effort I think someone put into it. What did I get, and how did that change the product? Did we avoid some major issues or some critical issues that could have gone out? And this last one, build out that flow of maybe what you think it could take to run the test if you have not run a test before. So these are kind of just some helpful ways to get started through that. So that first step, taking that inventory, looking at that flow, it's going to be really helpful when you start going and evaluating tools, because it gives you a sense of what the tool needs to cover for you specifically in your use case. All right, this one is less so like explaining that there's a lot of options available in terms of like tools specifically, and more so thinking about the different types of tools that you have available to you. When you're looking at tools for beta testing, if you don't have Centercode is the all-in-one tool for beta testing. But there are other options. I mean, obviously, there's people have been running beta testing for decades at this point. When you think about how you've run your tests in the back, there's in the past. Typically, it's done through like connection of multiple tools. You'll have a lot of beta activities that you need to do as an admin, and whether or not that's emailing people, or recruiting testers, or surveying them, or collecting feedback forms like issues from them. So this idea that when you're looking at solutions, there are a couple ways to do it. You can have an all-in-one that has multiple tools in one. It could have your survey tool, your feedback tool, could have recruitment, it could have planning. Centercode has all those things obviously we'll cover those a little bit of those later. But if you needed to use other tools to do that, how would you go about that? And that's very important when you're thinking about investing in a tool, because these are the different things that you need to compare. Like, okay, I could use SurveyMonkey and Google Spreadsheets or Microsoft Excel, and I could use, I'm probably going to use Jira, but am I going to use some kind of forum tool? How am I going to recruit those people? So you think about the possibility of the types of solutions you have available to you. And that can give you a good sense of how you're going to compare the tool that you're looking at, whether or not you're evaluating Centercode or evaluating some other tool. Think about all the options that are going to be available to you to run these projects. Obviously, when you have those point solutions or things like a SurveyMonkey, they're not necessarily specifically designed to do beta tests, but they do cover a domain very well. Like SurveyMonkey is a great survey tool. It's got great features for surveys. It lacks context of beta testing specifically, and it's not a front end for a beta test. So you don't want, your customers aren't expecting to log into a SurveyMonkey, and that's where they're going to get all their information. They're probably going to have to go to multiple areas in order to get what they want. So those are the two types of solutions. In my personal view, I like to think of it as, if I'm going to use those point solutions, I'm just making it work. I'm going to figure out how all this is going to work. Maybe I don't have a big budget right now, or I just need to get this done, and I don't have time to invest or look at these tools. So I'm going to look at the tools I have available to me, and I'm going to kind of just piece them together and say, like, I'll make my beta test. It may not be the prettiest looking thing, doesn't necessarily look or feel premium. It could be very average, basic, but I can get it there. And then I like to think of it making it work for you specifically. And this is where I really like those all-in-one tools, something like Centercode, because you can really design something like Centercode to provide a great beta test that fits perfectly inside your company. It's a great experience for your testers, great experience for your stakeholders. So obviously, shameless plug for looking at Centercode, but that's how I like to look at those two solutions. All right, this is a fun one. Everyone should have a good understanding of this one. It's about aligning your problems with features of beta testing, a tool for beta testing specifically. But when we do our sales calls, we will have introduction. We'll get to know whoever the contact is, the prospect at the time, and we want to understand what their challenges are. Why are they coming to us? What's kind of initiating this? And over the years, we've collected a great deal of data about like what we know the common challenges are, what the common problems are. So I wanted to share like these three problems. And if you've ever run a beta test, you've likely encountered these issues. The first one being getting data from testers. So getting participation, getting that engagement. And there's a lot of forms, different forms of engagement. That could be analytics, seeing that they're using the product. It could be feedback submissions. It could be issues or ideas that they have or things that they like. But this is one of those key problems out in the industry. And if you are looking at evaluating a tool, this is probably one that you're kind of aimed at trying to solve. And obviously, when you have those multiple tools, and the most common tools that we see that people are using are like email and spreadsheets and a survey. That's how they will manage their tests. So when we talk about getting participation, they're just hoping to get survey responses at this point, which can make it very difficult. And that second problem of collecting useful feedback. When you send out a survey, it's a single response from that tester. They can't elaborate. It's hard to get responses back from them on that. So you can kind of see how this is a problem. Is I don't get a lot of response rate. Like you can expect to see, I think industry average for surveys is like 2 to 5%. It's different based on incentives, different dependent on your market. But if you have trouble getting feedback, you have trouble making that feedback useful. And this last problem is you have a hard time finding the time to actually manage those projects. You could see how beta testing is just becoming kind of cumbersome. It's like a weight. It's going to take more work, and maybe I'm not going to get what I want out of it. We actually just ran our industry survey. These were the top 3 problems. I know we're going to be announcing those results, I believe next month. I just went through them. They're very interesting. But it's this view of beta testing at companies is kind of just bland. It's boring because it's so difficult, because you're piecing together tools that aren't designed to run beta tests. So in this next section, we want to cover when you're looking at beta testing tools, there's like a couple key features that you really want to look at. Centercode has infinitely more features than what I'm listing here. But no matter what tool you plan on using, you kind of want to think of these things as every tool that I need to evaluate should have these things in order to run my test effectively, to combat some of those problems that we just saw, and really gets what you want out of testing. So the first feature that I kind of want to highlight that you should look for in a beta testing tool is that tester community. It's the ability to have a group of testers in a spot, whether or not it's a portal. It could be things like a forum. It could be something like Centercode where you have a project space set up for them. But just some way for you to be able to store data on the testers, to be able to reach out to that group, to pull into a project, which is kind of number 3, which is the recruitment side of it. But what you want to look at is something to house your testers. And right now, what the sad thing is, a lot of people use a spreadsheet right now, right? They'll just have a spreadsheet that lists their users, maybe some email addresses, and hopefully something about them, like the company they work for or products that they have. But I highly doubt that's in most situations. So look for some kind of community for testers to kind of live in. That front end is super important for the tester side of getting engagement from them. The next, it's kind of like in tandem with these 2 things, the community and branding. This idea of branding is so key to beta testing. If you don't have like a well-branded site, whether or not it's branded emails going out, or even a survey being branded, the idea is that you're asking, at this point, almost a stranger, hopefully they're a customer, but it's like a stranger, you're asking to give feedback on a new product or new software update or feature set. So your branding is very important to establishing like a credible environment. It's something trustworthy. But one of those key reasons people are actually participating in your beta is to be part of your brand. So that they're there to give feedback, but they like engaging with you and talking with you because they feel like they have some kind of stake in this company. They love the brand and they love giving you feedback. So being surrounded by that brand, well, I don't recommend jamming your brand images and colors like down their throat on every piece of email that you send off. But it's good to build that sense of credibility by using something that allows you to have branding. The next feature is you're going to want to look at something that allows you to invite people. So this could be like a landing page, a sign-up page, a link that then they can apply to join a project. And then you want to think about the second stage of that, which is once I have them signed up, how am I going to get them under a non-disclosure agreement? How am I going to bring them into a project? How am I going to give them certain instructions or certain details that they need to know? And we call that onboarding them, right? Like we all get onboarded at companies. We get to know the company. You need to know where's what tools are used. Same thing with a beta test. You need to onboard that tester. You need to bring them in somewhere so they know, hey, that's where I'm going to provide feedback, or this is where I need to go to see the tasks that I have. We all consider that like part of the recruitment experience, more so the initial part. Next, a test designer. Now this one's very specific to Centercode, but it doesn't need to be specifically. When we think of a test designer, it's a way to plug in that scope of your projects, those initiatives, those goals, or those things that you want tested, and a way to translate that so testers can see it, because you want to be kind of transparent. You want to be clear about what you expect from them in testing. Centercode provides a direct resource for you can either import from a spreadsheet or you can build it directly in Centercode. But this idea of scoping activities, scoping out that schedule, and Centercode's not the only tool that allows you to scope out a list of, a schedule. Right? There's a lot of tools that can do that. But you want to look for something that'll actually puts a temporal nature to your project, something that can shape the scope of it and present that to users. So keep that in mind as you're looking or evaluating tools. The next one's just an obvious dumb one, a way to collect feedback from them. A lot of tools like TestFlight or TestFairy, they have the ability to shake the phone and submit feedback, right? That goes to some database, but this idea of that I need a path, I need a channel for them to communicate with me. Centercode has a lot of different ways of collecting that. We like to pre-bucket it. It's very intent-based. We have what we call issues, ideas, and praise. We also have the ability to survey people. But this idea of you need a method to collect feedback. So don't miss out on that. If you're looking at tools, make sure that you have an avenue for collecting feedback from people. Now, the next section after this is talking about integrating, but kind of I'll leave a thread there for talking about that with feedback. The next way, or the next kind of feature that I really urge everybody to look at if you're evaluating tools is call it a CMS, content management system, but it's a way to just communicate to testers. That could be something like an email or a web page or a blog or something like that. You're gonna have instructions for testers during testing. You're gonna want to be able to communicate information to them. If you're not communicating information to them, your test is probably very, I don't want to say it's boring, but you're probably not getting a lot out of your tests. Beta tests should not be, a fire and forget thing. There needs to be constant communication. Centercode provides automation for all of this stuff to, communicate. But think about this when you're looking at tools. If you're piecing together, a bunch of those ad hoc tools that I was talking about, make sure you keep in mind the idea of creating web pages or emails that you can get this information in front of them, whether that's product resources or instructions. So those are just 6 basic features. Check out centercode.com if you want to see more of a built-out list. We have a platform section that lists out all these great features, but make sure when you're looking at tools, if it's not Centercode, that you're getting this out of them. Now this one's really important, and it definitely doesn't happen so often with when we talk about leveraging point solutions. But you can. There's things like Zapier. There's a lot of tools that you can figure out how to integrate into systems. But when you're evaluating, kind of take a step back. This might be closer related to the taking inventory thing. But think about the flow of data between teams. If you're a product manager running a test, or you're a test manager, you're running a test and that's your full-time job. Think about how the data is going from the tool that you're collecting it in into the tool that needs that your stakeholders need to take action on it. So the easy example is if you find a bug in a beta test, the bug gets submitted into a SurveyMonkey form or a Google form or a SurveyMonkey survey. The idea is that you want to take that information and get it in front of the person who actually needs to see it, who needs to take action on it, right? So your engineering team needs to see the bug, right? Or your QA team needs to verify that that's a bug. So thinking about how you can integrate those systems is pretty important. And I have just like a little data flow example. So if you're in the process of evaluating tools or thinking about investing in a tool, do yourself this favor. On the left, I have just like the types of data that I'm going to be collecting or that I need to have. Identify what department needs it and what systems they use. There can be multiples. I have examples here like issues that needs to go to the dev QA team. They operate in Jira. So I need to make sure that my system is going to connect between whatever tool I'm collecting it in and in Jira, because it's going to save me a lot of time in doing that. It's going to give me a lot more effectiveness too. Because what you don't want to create is a black hole of collecting feedback. Your testers are going to feel that there's a black hole. They're not going to participate more. And then you're not getting usefulness out of the data you're collecting. A few other ones that maybe you don't think of too often. We have a lot of integrations I'll explain. We have a lot of integrations that our customers like to integrate into systems. So they'll get information from Salesforce or their CRM, and they'll be able to enhance. So we know certain information about their buying or their billing cycle, or information about their company. And we also want that back the other way. We want to know what customers are in beta tests. Sales might need to know that information to know who's a little more engaged or who's at risk. So thinking about it outside of just not the feedback collection, but all the data that's going to kind of flow through this test, whether or not it's into your test or out of your tests. So again, here's this deck is going to come out afterwards, but here's a useful kind of example to show you what you could build to help you kind of facilitate how maybe what integrations you need to look at when looking at a tool. All right, now this is our last tip, and it's a fun one for a lot of people. But this idea of building out your budget, and I mentioned before, like I've been on sales calls and people are like, oh wow, that's more expensive than I thought, or wow, that's really cheap, right? It's tough to look at a budget because it's hard to explain that it really compares or it depends on what you're comparing your budget to. And I have just kind of two ways that you could be looking at a budget. And I'm going to say very basic budget, nothing very elaborate. But this idea that you can look at your last project and kind of extrapolate that last project into what it costs to run it. And I have an example on the next slide that I'll show you guys. But the idea that I can use, okay, how much time it took, how many people did it take? And then maybe I want to look at, okay, it took that much for that project. How many projects am I going to run inside a year? How many products are we releasing? And that could give you, again, next slide's spoiler for it, but it can give you a good starting place for a budget. And then a lot of other people will look at other tools. So they'll look at tools they currently use in their tech stack, and they look at the per month price or per user price, or they look at the annual price, and they'll use that as a comparison to tools. And that's not a bad by any means. Hopefully these tools are all priced within the same range. And I'm not saying like all beta testing tools are priced the same, but if you're using things like AHA or Product Board or some kind of road mapping tool in your product manager, or you have SurveyMonkey and you have an annual license with them, or you have Qualtrics or user testing or any of those other tools, those can really give you a good baseline of where you should be expecting your budgets. If not, give you a good high and a good low of the tools that you spend today to give a comparison. I'll tell you right now, the prices of those tools probably don't anywhere compare to your system, your CRM systems that people are using. But it's a good place to kind of shape where you could have a budget. So I wanted to provide this is really quick. If I needed to do a budget in a hurry, this is probably something that I'd be using. I'll be very basic and I'll say I'm going to run one test per product. It's kind of the standard. Every product needs to have a beta test that goes out. And then maybe I'm launching 4 products this year. And I'll just take a very basic number and say there's 4 people that I need to have in my project that are going to kind of be in it. The people looking at the data, my product manager who may be conversing with customers or testers, engineering people taking a look at the data, and maybe I have some UX folks that I help with surveys or general advice. And then I have a very basic breakdown of, say it takes each of those people, like they're spending 10 hours a week, and over 6 weeks, it's roughly 60 hours. And I grab something like an average salary, which turns into like a $38 rate. I do some, quick, really smart math. But I just take the cost, the number of hours it takes, the number of people, the number of projects that I'm going to be running. And, I end up with something like it could cost just in personnel resources, not product resources, a rough ballpark of $36,500 just for this example. And now that could give me a good sense of where I could work in the budget, because say I want to cut that time in half, and I'm expecting the tool to cut in half. I can now look at that and say, like, okay, it's going to be 18 $18,000 is what I expect to save by investing in a tool. So again, these are good places to start. You can look at that as your last project and kind of extrapolate that out. You can also build that baseline of your existing tools to give yourself a high and a low, and then use that as a comparison. Other people like to use aspects of what they got out of their test. The idea is that there's ROI, certain investment. So say this 36K returned what? And from the beta test that I've got, X number of products got X number of feedback. X number of feedback was fixed versus all the feedback that I found. And say, okay, for my investment, this is what I got out of it. If I were to increase my investment, I'd expect more to get more out of it, or I'd expect to see more profit because I'm reducing the time it takes and I'm getting more out of it. So I hope that's helpful for everybody that's looking to evaluate a tool and kind of giving you a starting point for a budget of where to go. And I know we're only 30 minutes in at this point, but I wanted to cover just a quick recap, and then I'm sure Ria has some questions. If not, we're out of here. So we started off with taking inventory of your current program. Make sure you look back at your program, how your tests are being run, who's running them, what complaints they have. That's going to give you really, really juicy stuff. When we interview prospects, we're going to ask, how does it work today? Because it gives us a great context to be able to set up for a demo of how Centercode could solve those problems. Also, it helps to relive that pain because we're going through a sales conversation. The second one, looking at your options. There's a lot of tools that can help you do beta tests. There's a lot of tools that don't specifically help you do beta tests, but help you do tasks that you're going to want to do in a beta test. So that example of I'm going to want to collect feedback. SurveyMonkey is a way to collect feedback. So you want to weigh all these as options for you. There's a pro and con to each of these options. The third thing, aligning your problems with features. So taking inventory is a good way to look at the process, learn those problems. And then once you get into this aligning phase, you want to look at those problems and look at features that solve those specific problems, because it's going to be like you're doing comparison. Okay, this tool solves this problem. This tool solves this problem, but it doesn't solve this problem for me. So it's a good way to kind of elaborate more on that, taking inventory and making sure that the tool that you get solves your specific problem. Fourth one, integrating into your systems, super key. I can't stress it enough. You got to make sure that data is getting into the tools that other teams are using, because without that, you're going to rely on them to live in Gmail to get their or Microsoft Outlook to get their updates. Now they got to take action from there. You want to make sure that that's all it's seamless. It flows between one system to another, that we can fix it quicker because it's streamlined. And lastly, if you're looking to evaluate tools, I don't know where you are in your stages, but keeping in mind what the budget could be, so you're not kind of blindsided, and what tools or what budget you're working with to look at the tools that you have available to you. So that's the 5 things that you want to keep in mind when looking at beta testing tools. And from our experience, these are the 5 things that we typically go through inside a sales cycle when we're talking to people looking at tools. I'm going to hand it back over to Ria to.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so yeah, as Chris mentioned, there is going to be a piece of content coming out later on this month that will cover more of this topic. In addition to that piece that'll be coming out soon, we also have the role of technology in Delta testing, which is available now in our resource library. It covers a comprehensive list of must-have Delta testing features that will make product testing a breeze. Now, let's see, next. We've also got, if you are interested in the Centercode platform, you are welcome to schedule a free demo at centercode.com/demo. And we do have additional resources at centercode.com/resources. So throughout this presentation, I have collected some questions, so we're going to move into that Q&A section. If you have any questions that you've been holding on to, please use the tool to send them over my way. Or if they come to mind after the presentation, again, please email Chris. He's awesome at and loves talking to people about
I do love talking to people.
Yes.
If you do have questions, feel free, Chris at Centercode.com. I love answering questions. It's kind of my job, but
yeah. Okay, so first question here. So if tools are not natively in a language that my team or testers speak, but they could be localized, how should I factor that into the decision process? Should I just disqualify that program to begin with?
Localization is a big thing. For example, Centercode, you can create different instances based on languages. So if you have a team in Brazil and you have a team in China that you're looking to get feedback from, it's best to have them localized. The alternative is that you look for English speaking people within those countries. I wouldn't say that you should disqualify people. I mean, it super depends on your situation. But if I'm running a beta program and I want to make sure that I run a test in a lot of different countries, I want to do my best to localize them, but at risk of making sure that I need to run a test. So if it's only English speaking, it's only English speaking. So I wouldn't necessarily disqualify just for that unless my product was only in a specific country and that tool did not have the ability to. Like if I'm only in China, my product only sells in China, I want to make sure that the tool can be localized to China because I don't want to really, I guess, bias the situation. So I would need a lot more information to give you like a really good recommendation, but that's just kind of my basic advice.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out if there's a follow-up on that one. All right, next question here. Data protection, PII, GDPR weren't mentioned. How important are those features to consider for tools?
Yeah, very important. If you have the question of those things, you need to have features specifically for those. A lot of tools already have those kind of baked in. I mean, a lot of tech tools are very aware of GDPR, of privacy policies. So I have a hard time thinking of tools that don't have specific features for them. But it's good to understand that when you're running a beta test, where are the points that you're going to actually encounter PII? One of the things that we have a feature in Centercode that allows the opting out of a beta test. So you can remove yourself from a beta test. You can remove yourself from the platform. So if you're using things like SurveyMonkey or you're using things like Google Sheets does not have a specific feature for PII. It's being controlled by you. So whatever data you're putting into it, that's what's being controlled. So I'd say there's a risk if you're using tools that are really not designed to house the information that you're trying to collect. So maybe that's part of your taking inventory. If I'm storing data on customers inside my spreadsheets, do I run the risk of falling victim to GDPR or any PII laws that are out there? So yeah, that's definitely a good point. Is make sure you think about those security and compliance requirements for your company. It's very important when you're looking at tools.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was a great question. Thank you for submitting that. Next question here. Looks like the last question, but I will keep everything open a few moments afterwards, just in case there's any late ones. So this question asks, how can I anticipate how much time I'd save by using a specific tool when looking at time spent on past tests? Is there anything I can do ahead of time, or is it best just to ask on the call? I'm guessing they mean on the call with like the tool owner or seller.
Yeah, I understand. So you want to take inventory of how much time it takes you. And when we're talking about time savings, we have articles that Centercode that we post how much time we save, like the average person running a test. And we typically see upwards of 50% and beyond, depending on how big your program is, what kind of scale you have, and what you were doing before. So we definitely save people more than 50% of the time if they're doing some crazy stuff manually. I'll tell you right now, like give you an example. If I collect feedback inside SurveyMonkey and one of these testers submitted an issue, I have to now go create a Jira ticket. So I'm going to copy and paste that information. I'm going to put into a Jira ticket. I'm going to send that off to the QA person. That's all manual. That all took, maybe 30 minutes, an hour to do. But now I have to do that for all the issues that I run into. And, heaven forbid, you need to get more information. So that QA person or that engineer says, hey, can you ask them if they've tried this, or can we get this information from them? Can we get them a log or anything like that? You got to go back to that tester now and email, which is separate from your SurveyMonkey, and ask them to follow up. And we're talking about time just in waiting for them. So like that whole process is hours a week. And something like Centercode can really streamline that because it's integrated into Jira. You can get direct responses back from Jira into Centercode. So I'd say it's best to look at the ROI, or look at some benefit statements that the tool that you're looking at says it solves. So like, for example, Centercode says that you can handle more projects with a lot less time investment. And we have actual numbers to help you, kind of orient that a little bit. But that cost, budget was more so like setting up what you could expect to see. This is what it took to run your test. What you can save is going to come from those resources that the company provides, or that conversations through salespeople have. Salespeople would love to hear that information about how much effort it took and what tools you used. It's like a gold mine of information.
All right, thank you. That was another very informative answer. I think that will actually do it for questions. I'm going to give just a few seconds to see. Okay. Thank you. I got a comment. It was
Thanks,
not
Val.
a question. But yes, thank you very much for the warm words. Congratulations on 5 years with us. With that being said, I think we don't have any more questions. So on behalf of Chris, Centercode, and myself, thank you all very much for joining us today for 5 things top companies look for in beta testing tools. Have a wonderful day.